Good evening, and thank you for joining us. This year's World Youth Skills Day will once more be commemorated in a challenging context in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic and with education and training systems yet to return to pre-crisis conditions. The day celebrates the resilience and creativity of youth throughout the crisis and focuses attention on how technical and vocational education training TVET systems have adapted to the pandemic. World Youth Skills Day, observed annually on 15 July, focuses on the strategic importance of equipping young people with skills for employment, decent work, and entrepreneurship. Vaccinations offer hope to bring the situation under control in several high-income countries, but major emerging countries are facing severe outbreaks that overwhelm their health infrastructure. Education and training systems have yet to return to pre-pandemic conditions. Respondents to a survey of technical and vocational education and training TVET institutions, jointly collected by UNESCO, the International Labour Organization, and the World Bank, reported that distance training had become the most common way of imparting skills. But this has required curricular adaptation, trainee and trainer preparedness, connectivity and assessment and certification processes, etc. The pandemic and lockdowns have also resulted in an economic recession. The International Monetary Fund estimates that the world economy contracted by 3.3% in 2020. The ILO finds that 8.8% of work hours were lost in 2020, equivalent to 255 million full-time jobs. The World Bank underscores that the continuous trend toward poverty reduction, observed for more than two decades, was reversed. Instead of decreasing by 31 million in 2020 as expected before the pandemic, the number of people living in extreme poverty increased by 93 million. A year ago on its website, the World Economic Forum, in an article entitled World Youth Skills Day, What You Need to Know for 2020, stated that one of the main focus areas for Youth Skills Day is to highlight the importance of technical and vocational education and training, TVET, as a way of helping meet UN Sustainable Development Goal 4. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality education, and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. A sentiment still valid today. The UN says TVET can equip youth with the skills required to access the world of work, including skills for self-employment. Writing in a recent blog post, President of Microsoft, Brad Smith, said, "The pandemic has shined a harsh light on what was already a widening skills gap around the world, a gap that will need to be closed with even greater urgency to accelerate economic recovery." Training is essential, and training is shifting from an activity undertaken before employment to a lifelong process integrated into work, a lifelong rolling wave. Training will be core to both the pandemic economic period and more long-term changes in the workplaces of the fourth industrial revolution. This evening, Louise Coucher, Director Education and English, British Council, Sri Lanka, who has for most of her career dedicated her time and effort to establishing programs and dialogues to support young people develop their skills and employability, is our guest. Welcome, Louise, and thank you for agreeing to share your knowledge and expertise so very generously with our audiences on this very special day. And before you begin, I'm going to remind our audiences to please include the questions and comments in the chat, in the public chat, and we will address them in the Q&A section a little later on. Please do engage and join the conversation. Okay, Louise, shall we begin? What is the future of skills? I think Louise is on mute, sir. Yes. Sorry, Louise, I think you were on mute.
Yeah, if I had a crystal ball, I would tell you. However, I'm going to make a few comments and a few predictions based on what we can observe globally and here in Sri Lanka. And before I begin, happy World Youth Skills Day, everyone. So I would like to just share some reflections on the future of skills. And the first thing I would like to say is that skills cuts across everything. It can take place in secondary school, in traditional vocational training, which we can think of as further education, but also in higher education. And that's just within the education sector. We then, as Mrinali said, get into the concept of lifelong learning as the economy changes. I'd like to share, I have put down a few thoughts, and I'd like to share these in a relatively coherent and coordinated way through a PowerPoint. As you can see, IT is not necessarily my strength. And if I'm being brutally honest, my current favorite skill is that of hairdresser, because my hairdresser thankfully cut off my lockdown sort of shaggy hair, and I sit before you a refreshed and renewed woman. So, what is the future of skills? I'd like to think of this through 5 questions. I mean, obviously the pandemic, what are the jobs of the future? Let's start thinking work, employers. What are employers looking for? What about the value of jobs? Are some worth more than others? And then a key question for young people, well, for adults, for everyone, how do I get the knowledge and skills to get a job? I mean, starting with COVID-19, there must be very, very few places on the planet that haven't been affected by it. And I'm sure many of us, whether in Sri Lanka or in any other country, think of life before the pandemic and the lockdowns, what happened to us during the pandemic and the lockdowns, and what life will be like afterwards. You know, we hear a lot about the new normal. And in terms of skills, and that interface with jobs, before the pandemic, I think globally we could see a preference for more traditional jobs. Here in Sri Lanka, there's always been a long-standing positive attitude preference for government jobs. You know, the big 4, doctor, engineer, lawyer, accountant. And job security has for a long time provided a key driver and a key motivation. What I found interesting during the pandemic was none of that was really relevant anymore. I was here throughout it in Sri Lanka, and like probably all of you on this webinar, who became important in my life? It was the people producing food, agricultural workers. It was the people in retail. It was the people delivering, the things that kept me going as I was working from home. Teachers just did an amazing job, absolutely amazing. You know, the education continued. Young people were still learning, hopefully. It looked different, but it continued. These key workers got us through. And these are often people working in sectors that sometimes, let's be honest, we take for granted. And some sectors in Sri Lanka, as everywhere else, took a huge hit. I mean, the obvious one is tourism. And I think, the pandemic will contribute to us thinking slightly differently. Going forward, do we then sort of look at jobs differently? Are we looking at transferable skills? Do we need to be agile? If we've worked, for example, in the visitor economy and tourism, are there other jobs we can be doing while that sector recovers? It's that need for flexibility. And I think the future will also focus much more on portfolio careers. So what do the jobs of the future look like? There's been a lot of discussion about Industrial Revolution 4.0, disruptive technology. They are here. They are here. The fact that education is delivered through technology, through smartphones, all of the contact tracing apps. You know, I got very used to every time I went into a place, logging on to the government app to track my movements. And so that side of things is here. And of course, a key driver is that rebuilding and strengthening the economy in a global environment where everywhere has suffered from this. The one thing about sort of IR 4.0 is obviously that leads to a lot of improved automation in manufacturing and in industry. And some of the fear might be, well, what happens if a machine takes my job? And that may well happen. And I think what will happen as a result of that is there will be a premium on human resources. So we become even more valuable than we were before, but the requirements will be different. I think those areas such as creativity and innovation, it may be more challenging for automation to replace. So we need to be aware of our value as employees, potential employees, and look at the world of work differently. It will be a changing economic landscape globally. And key issues that are very topical. There is the upcoming United Nations conference on climate change in Glasgow in November this year. But these issues of ethical business, sustainable business, and green business have come to the forefront of the discussion on the future of jobs. We will be hosting a webinar on the 29th of July on the green economy, but if you think about it, it comes across in engineering, agriculture, power, business practices, marketing, tourism. The green economy can encompass business as we know it, and other potential emerging sectors are the creative industries. We know there's substantial investment or committed investment in Sri Lanka to develop that sector, and obviously with the large infrastructure projects, these places need project managers, they need human resources, they need logistics managers, and of course attracting foreign direct investment such as in financial services. These are all potential domains for the future. I mentioned financial services, and that sort of leads me into the question about, do we need to be specialists or generalists? And clearly, there are some jobs where specialist knowledge is vital. I mean, let's face it, none of you would trust me to do surgery on you because I'm not a trained qualified surgeon. And that will always be the case for some jobs in some sectors. But I think there will be an increasing emphasis on these transferable skills, which is more towards the generalist side of things, as business or business industry, I use the words quite generically, have to respond to changing circumstances, adapt, and take on these sort of sustainable and green challenges. And of course, going back to the disruptive technology, which is I think it's as simple as a smartphone and tracer apps. I think that actually will create opportunities because it challenges those former perceptions that you physically had to be in a place to do a job. The whole working from home, working remotely through the pandemic demonstrated this is doable. Whether we want to do it, whether we like to do it, is a different question. But it is doable, and for young people looking to enter the world of work through whatever pathway they choose, this sort of independence from physical space might provide them with new opportunities. So what are employers looking for? As I said, some of those jobs in particular fields may be very specific. You trust me, you don't want me to carry out brain surgery on you, but I'm good in education. But so there will be sector specific knowledge, but also the British Council carried out research in 2019 asking employers what they were looking for. And they started talking about sort of functions within their businesses like finance, HR, marketing, communications, logistics is a sector in a way, and these wider project management skills. So apart from the clearly defined subject-specific roles and jobs we can be interested in, the rest of these skills are far more generic. And I have deliberately used the word here, transferable. We are all familiar with the 21st century skills, problem solving, missing comma, creativity, innovation, teamworking, leadership skills. Oh, dearie me, I've noticed quite a few typing mistakes here. Shame on me. Flexibility and adaptability. And I think new transferable skills that are emerging are very much resilience. We may try things, they don't work. We may start a job and the direction of travel within the company or globally in terms of markets, sales opportunities, investment opportunities may lead us to really develop that sense of resilience. And also, as what we may see is increasing levels of entrepreneurship, even intrapreneurship within companies. But this sense of personal accountability for what we do, I think will move into the transferable 21st century skills. IT and digital. I will admit quite openly, I'm in the generation of if my laptop is being difficult, I switch it off and I switch it on again. But IT and digital skills, digital literacy, when we think about Industrial Revolution 4.0 as well, and disruptive technology are now a standard requirement. And what many employers say they are looking for is for applicants for jobs to have insight into, understanding of, maybe experience of the world of work, which is as much these transferable skills, personal skills, cognitive skills, communication skills, as well as attitudes. And in fact, going back to our research, the big skills gap and skills requirement that all sectors came up with across the board was communication skills. And this did include English, partly due to and through our examinations work, good to have confirmation of levels of proficiency. We also collaborate extensively with the government in teacher education, looking at assessment, professional standards for teachers, and are pleased to have contributed to the recent public consultation on the national education reforms. So I think the key message here is that employer skills requirements are actually shifting. And so a flexible approach in finding out what they are may be helpful. We come back to the old chestnut, the old problem of what jobs are worth. And we can look at this in terms of the financial packages, but also the social perspective. And the financial value of a job is clearly the reward, pay, benefits. Is there career progression? Do salaries go up automatically every year? Does it come with achievement of additional qualifications? But there may, sort of reward comes through entry, progression, through the chosen field. And of course, the other thing to remember is the availability or the scarcity of the resources. So If any of us choose to study or gain skills and qualifications in certain areas, if you like, our market value depends on how many other people there are with the same qualification and the same experience. So how do we make ourselves stand out in the job market? And so part of that research when thinking about future jobs and skills is possibly going for the areas that maybe are less popular, where our value, our financial value may go up as we are part of a more limited resource pool. Now, it would be remiss of me not to mention the social value of jobs. This is something everybody is familiar with across the globe. And there are those perceptions of acceptable jobs, good jobs. We go back to the doctor, engineer, lawyer, sort of accountant thing, and being successful. And these are quite difficult perceptions to shift. They come from our families. I can't actually say this. I mean, I started as a teacher. My parents actually won't. But in many cases, jobs sort of pass down through the families, generations of lawyers. And there are also expectations that are set up by our own peers. Thinking back on when I was making these career choices, there was pressure to go on to higher education. And I do remember classmates going, actually, I want to go out and get a job and I want to take a more vocational pathway. And in a sense, vocational education may be, I personally challenge this very strongly, but it may be seen as being less socially acceptable. It's something you do if you're not really good enough to do anything else. And I strenuously challenge that perception. This is part of the wider social perception on the value of jobs. And it is what constitutes a good job. And I think more widely in terms of value of jobs, I think there will be a shift between looking at and making assessments on whether a job is satisfactory. Does it give you that financial reward, and whether it is satisfying? And does it help us achieve our own potential? Does it allow us to become the best we can be? I mean, at this point, I think the best way of illustrating that is for us to share with you a very short video clip of an extraordinarily successful business person who we interviewed exactly about these questions. So if we can please go to the video clip.
Important things is that an economy requires everybody to participate. We always forget that. We always think that our few people who run a business or who work at a top level in a corporate participate in an economy. But you need a baker like me. You need people who build our ovens, who repair our ovens. You need people who handle our delivery seamlessly. Every one of us has the ability and should be involved in this economy. I've always worked with food. I've always cooked, and I've always cooked for people. So for me, the idea of it being kind of a dream or a passion is something that it didn't start off as. For me, I really see this as a business and doing it really well. And being good at food, being good at what you do and caring about what you do is of course important, but that's just that first step. The advice I would give to anyone is keep learning. It's helped me. It's helped me build a business from something that I like to do, and it's helped me to be able to do that. Always keep learning. Also, try something new. Gather as much of those skills as you can, and when you're ready and when you know what you want to do, just go into it. Today, your ability to run a business from your home with very little investment is an excellent place to start. Do something. Do it small, do it well, and don't be afraid of that. I think it's going to be always difficult when social pressure comes, when your parental pressure comes, why you don't fit this idea of what success looks like. I think you're going to have to face that question yourself as a young person. If you have the ability to do that, the rewards are greater. You find yourself much more much happier than a lot of your friends who there are some people for whom those jobs are perfect. From the day they were born, you knew they were going to be a doctor, knew they were going to be an engineer. That was clearly the way that they fitted into that. But most of us don't fit into that. So it's better for us to kind of explore different things, get a lot of different skill, try something new, do it. If you're a parent, keep your children learning, give them opportunities, give them a wide variety of experience and exposure. Get them to do something. Let them take a small piece of their passion and get them to move it all the way to the other end. Because I think that you're not going to be able to direct anymore as parents. And your children are going into a workforce that is far tougher than what you faced and what your parents faced, and we're seeing this. So keep an open mind. Try to equip people with the skills they want to. Encourage the ideas and the crazy ideas for them to find something. See how much you can help them find the skills to run their own business. Show them how to keep accounts. Show them how to handle a customer. Show them how to do those basic things. That's much more valuable.
Loved what he said, because he said, if you have a passion, follow your passion, and he said, start small. And I think that's so important. Even it has always been important, and I think going forward, it's a very good thing to build from. That is a very useful little clip. I think Louise is having a small bit of, connectivity issues. So till she comes on again, I will just go back to some of the stuff she was talking about, and just reiterate a few points. I think transferability was key. I think we need to, and I think I completely agree with her, having had a very formal education training in Sri Lanka, completely in Sri Lanka. I've had to sort of move my skills around, move my capacities around, and it has been a wonderful and enriching journey. And I hope a lot of people will see that as a challenge and as an opportunity and something to thrive within, rather than sort of look at a job as a job and sort of look at work as just merely something that brings you a financial reward and maybe a social reward. So I think that was a wonderful thing Louise touched upon. Just one moment. Sajid, if you can take me off for a minute. Okay, because I think Louise is having connectivity issues. So just give me one moment. Sajid, could you please take me off air for a minute? Thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, wonderful. Okay, Louise is coming back on. I don't know what it is today, but we do have these days. Great, so she's back. Louise, I was just talking about how things have to be transferable and your skills have to be transferable. And I think an attitude also has to be transferable. So thank you for talking about that. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. Well, as you can see, my IT skills leave a lot to be desired. So if anybody would like to give me some additional tuition, please get in touch. I was just about to go on to the last point I would like to make. And Harry-Ann in the video really talked about how everybody can contribute in whatever way to the economy, and hopefully he gave some ideas on some of the options. It's about supply chains, it's about doing things differently and following what you would like and what you're good at. I don't know if the presentation is still available. I will try putting the screen up. If it isn't, as it's the last input, I will talk through it. If somebody could, well, I'll talk through it.
It's the last slide, so it's all right.
Right, okay. rather than messing around trying to get it back, I will just share some reflections on this issue of education, training and qualifications. And I hope we'll have a few minutes a bit later to talk more about this. But let's face it, you know, there are traditional pathways: school, higher education. And higher education is very often academic. It's the acquisition of, hopefully, useful knowledge. It is assessment of that knowledge, sometimes manipulation of that knowledge, and to a high level. And vocational education, or as I think about it, further education, tends to be more practically oriented. And traditionally, it's a relatively lower level. But ultimately, I think it's important to acknowledge that all sectors require skills at different levels: entry levels, middle management levels, senior levels, and they all need technical knowledge and insight and theoretical knowledge, but also application. So I think we're seeing a bit of a shift in terms of perceiving skills as being not only the traditional sort of plumbers, electricians, car mechanics, but let's be honest, you know, if we're working in the creative industries, these are, particularly the digital creatives, these are highly sophisticated skills, you know, degree level, postgraduate degree level, but they require practical application. I mean, just as an aside, I have a master's in cultural and media studies, but quite frankly, I wouldn't probably even get a job making the tea in a film production company because all my knowledge is theoretical, high level, but theoretical. So I think we are seeing this shift in approaches to curriculum with higher education, looking at how TVET addresses that engagement with employers. We're looking at on-the-job training. There is a lot of interest in Sri Lanka. We work with the National Apprentice and Industrial Training Authority and together with HEs on looking at that possibility of introducing degree apprenticeships. And when we go back to the Industrial Revolution 4.0, if you remember, I said we will end up placing a premium on human skills. So we're looking for those high level, and let's face it, higher paying jobs with this higher skills level. And so I think we need to look at a flexible approach across sort of the more traditional TVET, more traditional higher education, and start smoothing out some of these differences, where as learners, we can access both the theoretical and the academic, and the very sort of high level practical applications as well. So the boundaries may become a bit blurred. And the last thing I would say about the qualifications is the need to have internationally portable qualifications. So young people with Sri Lankan qualifications, their qualifications are recognized and they are securing jobs, not just within Sri Lanka, but internationally. And as we said earlier, this sort of the impact of the disruptive technology and the remote working means we don't actually have to physically be in the same building, in the same office, in the same city, or even in the same country. So I do think this sort of opens up a huge amount of opportunities for the workforce of the future, for young people who are looking at choosing their pathway right now. So really, it's back onto knowledge, definitely. Attitudes towards work, portfolio careers, being globally mobile. Personally, I would like to think of myself as a digital nomad. I love the idea of swinging in a hammock with my laptop, doing something fabulously creative, unlikely to happen, but I like the idea. But ultimately, we come back to that idea of skills, how we acquire them, how we develop them, and how we utilize them as we go forward from education into employment. So that's the last of those reflections.
Okay, thanks, Louise. But and this is a wonderful segue into the whole TVET conversation that we wanted to have. I know you've been doing a lot of work in that area with also with government stakeholders. What can we tell young people about making that sort of mix of qualifications? Because we still prize academic qualifications. You know, that's still there. That hangover we still have. So how can we encourage young people to sort of look at the other career options as well and see them as equally attractive?
I think that's a really, really good question. And there are quite a lot of parties involved in addressing this. I mean, I talked about the social value of jobs. And I think, and this is very, very clearly understood. We work very closely with the Tertiary and Vocational Education Council in Sri Lanka. They have formulated their next 10-year plan. And I do remember, I think it was at last World Youth Skills Day, the Honourable President announcing that 2130 would be the decade of skills development. And he is talking of skills at the highest level. You know, for creative industries and the green economy and so on. And in our work with TVC, we know that they are very aware of the need to shift perceptions. So it's all parties, whether it's education providers, employers play a critical role. But as Hariam was talking about earlier, it's also up to parents to keep an open mind and allow young people that possibility to explore. I think there is a responsibility also among education providers to ensure that their offer responds to the labour market. And I'm equally aware of the work that's being carried out by the University Grants Commission. We collaborate with them, obviously, and the Quality Assurance Council in benchmarking university qualifications to benchmarking them internationally, but also benchmarking them to industry requirements and the labour market there. I think employers have a part to play. It's always when you get our colleagues in the government and our colleagues among employers together, it's sometimes easy to go, well, you know, you don't tell us what the work requirements are, and the other side to go, well, you don't involve us in curriculum design. So I think it's a very collaborative effort where all parties win. And these are the steps we take. I mean, particularly in the more sort of familiar TVET sector, it's employers who decide. It's employers who say, these are the jobs, these are the competencies, these are the knowledge and skills we need people to have to be able to do these jobs. So there is a very clear interface with the more familiar TVET, usually delivered through further education, and employers. And it's extremely, extremely positive to see this linkage with higher education featuring very clearly and very explicitly in the national education reforms. And I like to think we at the British Council have contributed to that dialogue through our research over the past 2-3 years. And then the final thing is young people. Sorry, the last piece of the puzzle, if you like, in the system is solid careers guidance. From the age of 14, we have worked very, very collaboratively with the National Education Commission on this, and our joint recommendations, the NEC's recommendation with our inputs, is that careers guidance should begin at the age of 14. It should be mandatory. It should be professionalised. Let me rephrase that. It must be mandatory. It must be professionalised, and it must link to the labour market. And that will allow young people at whatever point they are in their transition to be able to make an informed choice. So it's having that flexibility. I mentioned those sort of flexible approaches. And as an individual, I think we should be able to go from school into higher education if we want, then into vocational education, and keep going across. So we need to look at equivalencies. Speaking in terms of the UK, we have vocational education offering up even to master's levels in traditional vocational institutes, and higher education offering degree apprenticeships. So then we also come into this issue of the value of on-the-job training. So I think it's a very complex pattern, and each part of, if you like, the jigsaw needs to play its part. But the national education reforms the government has undertaken, and which we are privileged to be able to contribute to in an appropriate way, is an incredible opportunity to get all these pieces of the puzzle in sync. Having said that, you can develop a system, but then we still need to address some of those social values or towards work and jobs, jobs to the girls, jobs to the boys, all this kind of thing, and that matter of choice. I hope that answers the question in some shape or form.
No, it does, Louise, and it's very good. I mean, it'll be wonderful when we reach a stage of blurring where, it becomes almost interchangeable, so that then you take away the sort of the kudos of an academic qualification, or it gets transferred to a vocational qualification as well. Have we lost Louise again? Because maybe till she comes back on, we can play the video. There was a video at this point that she wanted to show. If we can have the video on, that would be great. We're having technical issues today. Yes.
Consider what I studied in university, it had absolutely no bearing on what I chose as a profession. My parents were thinking that I would go into NGO work, probably try to become an economist or a political scientist. I came and worked as a stockbroker in Sri Lanka. What I do now has nothing to do with what I had to study for my stockbroker license. What I pursued to get to where I am now is learning how to study, learning how to read, learning how to analyze something. It's not just about the subject matter, and that means I can take any subject and sit down with it, put in a certain amount of hours, and I understand that subject. So when it came to the company I started first, which was Sky, I did not know how to fly a drone. I did not know what geo-surveying meant. I did not know how the software processing worked to create orthographic maps. After about 6 months of trial and error and sitting down and studying the subject, done. And then I had basically made my annual salary in just a few weeks. Sky works in the construction and property development sectors, and we work for private landowners. But if you consider the type of project we work on, the projects we work on are quite important to the country. The landscape for jobs 10 years from now is going to be even more different and alien than the current landscape for jobs. So you need to set up your child to have that skill to learn. Right? How does a child learn, and how can you make them learn faster? Why I'm saying to do that is because then your kid can respond to changes in the environment of doing business in Sri Lanka or wherever the person is. The last thing I would do is just raise your children with technology. Don't be scared of technology. Buy them a camera. Buy them a good computer that they can maybe make some videos on. Or if they are musically inclined, they can use that to record their own music. But by them learning how to use this complicated technology, it takes a complicated topic and makes it simple for them. If your kid is maybe 10 or 12 years old, start coding. Make them learn how to code for voice user interface, not just for graphical user interface. Make sure they know technology is developing around them, that this thing called coding exists, that there are different types of interfaces, that a computer is not just for you to talk to your friends. It can do so much more than that. If they know that early on, they'll be solving the problems for the future. While they're young, they'll be thinking of solutions for it. Just get them thinking in different languages. It all has a scientifically proven effect on the brain to change the chemistry and to make the brain a bit more perceptive to things. A couple of things to the youth of Sri Lanka. If you're 17, 18, 19, 20 years old and you're thinking about what to do next, at some point inside of you, you should say no to people who are telling you what to do. At a certain point in your life, right now, you want to fail more than you're going to succeed, because failure is going to inform a lot more about your personality and how you tackle the next project. The third and the last lesson, don't pursue money, it will never come to you, right? The minute you stop pursuing salary as a primary motivation, you might feel dirty. You might feel like a capitalist and say, no, I won't believe in that. But the minute you stop looking at the money and you start looking at value, you're going to make it big.
I think that's one of the hardest things, not to be afraid of failure. I think that's very, very difficult. So if you can teach a child not to be afraid of failure, I think that's a huge thing. And also, I love that Praveen said that, you know, to teach them to keep learning. That's what I think Louise is so passionate about, and that's what she keeps encouraging among her peers at work, and also whenever I have heard her speak. She's always talking about how she wants to learn and how she wants other people to learn. And that is something from the British Council that we were also trying to share and encourage in people, that, you know, never to stop learning, because it's such a growing process. And I love that video from Praveen where he said also to look for the value and not for the salary, as he said, not for the money in it. Okay, I don't know whether we are going to have Louise. I think she's still having problems, but we were going to move on to the next part of our discussion. Just let me see whether she's going to come on. Okay, there's another thought that I really wanted to talk to Louise about, and I will put it up now so that, do we have her on? Okay, so we still don't have Louise. I don't know whether there was an issue with the connectivity today or whether there was some, yeah, there is a problem with Louise's connectivity. So, okay, if you can just give me 1 second, bear with me 1 minute. Should I try calling her? I mean, we're talking about technology and saying we have to be up to date on all these things. And I mean, then you have, and it has completely changed. The pandemic has completely changed the way we all work. We went from face-to-face events, where we would have had an event like this face-to-face. We've moved it onto an online platform. And then sometimes we are at the mercy of technology. And then this happens to us. So it has its pros and cons, a lot of pros, very rarely a con. But just hang on a minute. I'm going to see whether I can reach her on another device, which is a telephone. Hold on. Sajid, if you could please take me off screen or mute me. So, okay.
It's just useless. The connection's just really, really bad.
Okay. So unfortunately, it looks like we have a really, really, really bad connectivity at Louise's end. So if you don't mind, we'll give her a minute or two, because there's lots more we wanted to talk to her about. And let's see where it goes. But I'm going to put this thought out there because it's something I really want to talk about too. We're talking about transferability, and we're talking about employees being employable. And she was also talking about having a portfolio career. So sometimes, for employers also, it'll take a mindset change, because if an employee comes in and they want, and it's going to be a portfolio kind of career, my understanding is that if you have several skill sets, you might want to do what I'm doing kind of like right now, do a program like this. Oh, Louise is back, she'll be on. But also I might want to use some of my time, maybe my off time, to work somewhere else doing something completely different. So would our employers also be able to countenance that? So that's something I want to talk to her about and see whether, Hi, Louise. Hi. Are you back? Are you back properly? You're making a very rude noise.
Oh, it sounded like crocodiles barking in my garden.
Oh, now I have an echo from you. Louise. Oh. Is there something we need to do? Should we log out and log completely back in again, or what? Is it better now? Okay, it's better. Louise, okay, I wanted to ask you about this portfolio career. And I found that very interesting, because if there's a person, okay, we were talking about potential employees having a different mindset, but how will an employer also approach a person who wants a portfolio career? Like, currently I bring this skill set to my job, but if I wanted to do something other than this at a different time of the day when I'm off this work, how would employers sort of look at that? And is that in their mindset, and is that something they're considering, that they may not have employees who are exclusively working for them all of the time, or during their career or whatever?
Okay.
Okay, let's go again. Okay, you have been muted so that you can refresh your screen. I'm so nervous about refreshing this screen. Sometimes you go away and you never come back again. Louise, can we have Louise on again, or what? All right. So that's one thought, and I've already now managed to put that into Louise's head. So I hope that she will come back and she will talk to us about it. And also, if there are any people out there in the audience who would like to pose questions, please put them in the public chat, because if we have Louise on, I would really like to ask her those questions for you. So please do that. And I think right now she's trying to get connected again. Oh, there she is. How wonderful. I mean, I was just saying, they say technology, and I said we've been working from, all over the place, and we make the change, but sometimes technology just is not our best friend. So, okay. I was just asking you about employers and how whether you have seen any response to that kind of, whether you discuss portfolio careers and people who might want to pursue that kind of employment.
Yeah. I don't know if the microphone's on.
It is on. It is on. I can hear you.
It makes me think back to one of those words I used at the beginning, which is resilience. And this is very much resilience in the face of disruptive technology in all senses of the word. But to answer your question seriously, I mean, I was thinking about it actually when I was trying to get back on the call. And there are some jobs where the portfolio career may consist of doing the same or similar with different companies in different countries. I mean, I've been with the British Council for a long time, and I've actually done different jobs, focusing on education reform, business development, done some society work in different countries, and they're all sort of related. But I see myself as having had a portfolio career within the British Council. The one thing I will never be is a financial lead. Don't have that skill set. But again, it is that transferability of skills. And we go back to the specialist generalist. And in terms of a portfolio career, you can either do it because, well, as I say, because you maintain a similar or related field within the same company, moving across different functions within the company, that have very high skills requirements.
Oh no, today is just not our day. It might be World Youth Skills Day, but it's not our day. I think we've lost her again. And really, people are here to hear Louise. So what we do when we have problems like this is we have to refresh the screen, because that's how this platform operates. Sometimes it takes a little longer than others. Sometimes it's fine. It just depends on the quality of the connection also, and the connectivity. So we'll live in hope. This was something that, we thought Louise should do, because she's so extremely passionate about the youth and improving their opportunities for employment and employability. It's something she's extremely passionate about, and she's worked very hard to sort of make changes, talk to the change makers, and influence policy in a very positive way. So well, if I don't get Louise back on soon, I think I will just wrap up. Yeah, I know. Sajid, who's handling tech, says it's her connectivity. And yeah. It's such a shame, because we did want to talk about gender and jobs and disability and jobs. And we also did want to discuss the visitor economy that she's extremely passionate about also, and has done a lot of work, and which is very relevant to Sri Lanka, because it's about the tourism sector, and that has been badly hit by the pandemic. So we wanted to explore maybe ways in which that sector could look at coming back. And being sort of back to its robust self. And of course, we were going to look at gender. And there was one more video she wanted to share, but I don't know. Oh, we have her. Oh, Louise.
So does that mean I've been talking to myself for the last 5 minutes?
Not a bad thing, Louise. So I was just saying that we wanted to move on from here into gender and jobs and disability and jobs, and also to the visitor economy. So if you'd like to pick which of those topics, just before you go away, which one is most closest to your heart that you want to say something about, I think speak now.
Yeah, I really was talking to myself just now. Okay, some quick statistics. Just over 50% of girls qualify for university entrance. Just over 50%, more females than males actually are admitted to universities. The majority of art students, which is the biggest cohort, are young women, and it may take up to 2 years for over half of them to get a job. So, obviously, key principles. I mean, pick jobs that link to the workplace. There is the principle of, equal pay for equal work. And while we see a small number, hopefully growing, of very, very successful female chief executives, chief operating officers, a lot of women in the workforce are at the lower levels in the career progression, and we need to see more women go through middle management. So again, I suspect, if you can still hear me, family pressure, yes. Social pressure. Yeah. There is also this perception of jobs for the girls, jobs for the boys. I mean, quite frankly, I'm never going to be a firefighter because I'm too fat and too short and don't have very good eyesight. But why shouldn't I be if I meet the criteria? So I think in terms of access to education in gender, in terms of gender balance, Sri Lanka does extremely well. But it's what happens afterwards. What happens after education? Does this translate into employment? And let's face it, some sectors are perceived as being unsuitable. Tourism is often seen as being not a great job for women. And so it's translating that knowledge and expertise into employment.
And I would please like you to again. Yes. And also, before you disappear, please say something. See, I want you to talk about the disability aspect as well, because how can we integrate people with disabilities into the formal economy, and address that belief that persons with disabilities are only capable of working in the informal economy?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. And it's one as you can see from my expression, I struggle with that because I think, it shouldn't have to be a case of mainstreaming. They're potential members of the workforce. And like everybody else, I mean, I just mentioned I'm never going to be a firefighter because I'm too fat, too short, not healthy enough and can't see properly. And so it's sort of going, well, the talent pool is there. The opportunities are there. Each job will have its own limitations. And so why would we have to mainstream it? But thinking very practically, there are things companies can do by having strong equality, diversity and inclusion policies. This may look, for example, in terms of recruitment, saying, we will guarantee an interview for people with disability. We're not going to sort of you out. It's based on, are you the right person for the job? I think a bigger problem, to be honest, is attitudes within the workplace. And it's these perceptions that whatever the disability is, there are restrictions. I must admit, I find that a bit hard to understand at times. And once a person with whatever the disability is, the strongest candidate for the job, is in the workplace, then it's a question of employers making reasonable adjustments. Whether it's on a practical level, like wheelchair access, or whether it's screen size for people who may be visually impaired, or similar loop hearing and stuff like that. That there are reasonable adjustments employers can make if they want to commit to doing it. So policies, actual workplace practice. The big one is workplace attitudes and wider societal attitudes. So the fact this type of question gets asked illustrates some of those perceptions in terms of capabilities of individuals with disability. I hope that begins to answer the question.
And hopefully post-pandemic, a lot of perceptions about working from home have now completely been changed because most of us have worked from home. So if you are a disabled person and you don't want to go out really, but you're comfortable at home and that's what we've all been doing for the last 1+ years. We've all been working from home,
Absolutely. And I think sort of, as the pandemic hopefully will stabilize, it is an opportunity to recalibrate the economy, recalibrate the world of work, recalibrate how people acquire the knowledge and skills that will allow them to enter the workplace, irrespective of who they are and where they are. I'm actually personally feeling quite optimistic. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing people again in person. The downside of the remote working is that social engagement, which we all need. Well, not all of us, many of us, I personally need, value and appreciate, but we have got through it, and it does give us that opportunity to think differently. And to think positively in an inclusive way for all members of society. And going back to Harry-Ann's video, just saying, everybody in whatever way can contribute to the workforce.
Yes. And Louise, I know that you're particularly passionate about the visitor economy, and I know that you wanted to talk about it. So.
Well, the traditional view of the visitor economy tends to be tourism, tends to be sort of hotels, food and beverages. And quite frankly, I'm from the UK and I've lived here for 4 years. And yes, I fully support the notion of Sri Lanka as the paradise island, with such a wealth of riches. I think it's now is the time, and we are working with TVEC and the Tourism Sector Skills Council on expanding tourism into the visitor economy, which includes not just sort of resorts and hotels, but it includes craft, heritage, entertainment, wildlife, Ayurveda, wellness, health, wellness. And it's, Sri Lanka has so much richness and wealth in this domain. Now is the time, as people start sort of going back, and we sort of preempted this by starting this work a couple of years ago, into developing a sector that is flexible and can draw in all these multiple dimensions and the benefits that the island has to offer. And of course, included in that is sales, marketing, promotion, animal conservation, green tourism, ethical tourism. The scope is tremendous. And so it's great that, to work with colleagues, not only in the government, but also in the private sector, who have such a sort of passion and commitment to drive this agenda forward, because it's a win-win situation if we get it right.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm too nervous to try showing any more videos.
No. Don't throw me out again.
Like
video clips that throw me out.
Let's not jinx it. But would you like to talk specifically about something that the British Council is doing that you think people would be interested to know and hear about?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for that question. I hear myself say we a lot. When I say we, I'm going, me, I'm a young person. Hey, look at me, planning my future. I'm a collaborator with the government. We're a collaborator with the private sector. I mean, the national education reforms are the big agenda. It is literally a unique opportunity to recalibrate. Whether it's at primary education, secondary education, vocational, tertiary. It's going. What do we want the country to look like in 20, 30 years' time? And sort of education and skills, I bundle them together, are so fundamental to shaping that future. And we've been working with colleagues in the National Education Commission on policy, careers guidance. We do work extensively in the field of English and sort of working a lot for a long time on teacher development to ensure that young people, from secondary level, get access to learning opportunities to allow them to develop their language proficiency, which, as we know, employers say is important. We support, we've been collaborating extensively with the University Grants Commission and the Quality Assurance Council on looking at the quality of higher education and how we can involve students in that quality assurance. well, you can tell where my passion lies across the board, but also in skills, in doing what we can to support colleagues in TVEC, in NITA, and in other sort of government bodies, sort of continue to shape their strategies to ensure that the offer is suitable, it's fit for purpose, it's very much linked to that sort of future development. So it's been an absolute privilege over the last few years to be able to engage in such a sort of key area of work at such a level. And if any of my colleagues who I've just mentioned are listening in, it is a pleasure, and we look forward to continuing to be part of this very, very, very important time and these reforms to the extent of our ability, and not just on behalf of the British Council, but on behalf of the UK as well. We go through this, we've gone through these things, sometimes up, sometimes down, and I'm obviously, very keen not only to, as appropriate, provide quality education in the UK, I have to mention that, but also to be to have the privilege of being a partner on this very sort of exciting big reform. It was not started now, it started some time ago, but it's really, really gaining absolute momentum. It's just an incredible opportunity and a privilege for us to be part of that under our Transform programme.
Thank you, Louise. I'm so glad that your connection came back up again. But if you have nothing more to add, I think I will go into wrap up. I was very worried for a minute, thinking, oh my gosh, we're not going to have you back again. But it's so good. I've never been happier to see you. So
my resilience shines through.
Yes. But so thank you so much, Louise. I know it's pretty stressful when the tech plays up. And I think you've done wonderfully. You shouldn't be hard on yourself and say you're not technically good. You've got yourself back online, which is more than I would have been able to do. So congratulations and thank you, Louise. We got a lot of ideas, and I hope it'll make people think about also their careers going forward in this post-pandemic world, where a lot of the messages coming out are not all that optimistic. So thank you for your optimistic message also, because it gives hope. And thank you to Sajiva and Sajid, who supported this program. And from Louise and me, it's good night and stay well.
Thank you. Good night.
You.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.